Margaret Hayes stood in her kitchen that Tuesday evening, hands trembling as she held her phone. The trip to Boston, the one she'd been planning for months to visit her college roommate, was now cancelled. $300 lost on the hotel deposit, but that seemed insignificant now. Her 7-year-old son, Tyler, had whispered those words to her just an hour ago. Words that made her blood run cold. Words that made everything suddenly make sense. Daddy has a lover, and when you travel, they're going to take all your money. Margaret was 41, a financial analyst with warm brown skin and eyes that had seen both joy and hardship. She'd built a life with David over 12 years of marriage. They had Tyler, their smart, observant boy, and a comfortable home in suburban Philadelphia. She'd thought they were happy. She'd thought they were building something together. But lately, David had been distant. Late nights at the office, more business trips than usual. And now, this revelation from their innocent son. Margaret didn't confront David immediately. She'd learned patience over the years, learned to think before acting. Instead, she made herself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in the darkening kitchen, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. She thought about trust, about vows, about the life they'd promised each other, and she made a decision. Over the next 3 days, Margaret became a detective in her own home. She checked bank statements she'd never questioned before. She found a credit card she didn't know existed, small charges at restaurants she'd never been to, a jewelry purchase she'd never received. The evidence stacked up quietly, methodically. On Thursday evening, while David was supposedly at a late meeting, Margaret hired a babysitter and followed him. Her heart pounded as she drove 3 cars behind his sedan, watching him pull into the parking lot of an upscale apartment complex across town. She waited. 20 minutes later, a woman emerged from the building, younger, maybe 30, with long auburn hair and a confident stride. David met her at the door, kissing her in a way that felt practiced, familiar. They went inside together. Margaret sat in her car, tears streaming down her face. But something else was building inside her too. Not just hurt, something stronger, something purposeful. She drove home, paid the babysitter, and tucked Tyler into bed, kissing his forehead with extra tenderness. Her son had tried to protect her with his whisper. Now, she would protect their future. Friday morning, Margaret called in sick to work, something she rarely did. She spent the day making phone calls to her lawyer, an old friend from law school, to her bank, opening a separate account, to her brother, Marcus, who worked in security and owed her several favors. By evening, she had a plan. That night at dinner, David seemed relaxed, happy even. He complimented her cooking. The pot roast she'd made was his favorite, and talked about his day as if nothing was wrong. Tyler ate quietly, watching his mother with those knowing, worried eyes. David, Margaret said calmly, setting down her fork. I know about Christine. The color drained from his face. The silence stretched long enough to hear the kitchen clock ticking. Margaret, she held up her hand. I don't want excuses. I want honesty. How long? 8 months, he whispered, unable to meet her eyes. I'm sorry. You never meant to get caught, Margaret finished. Tell me about the money. Tyler said something about taking my money. David's face shifted from guilt to panic. He heard that. Tell me. The truth spilled out. Christine had convinced him they could start fresh together, move to California, use Margaret's savings that were in their joint account, leave everything behind. They'd been planning it for weeks. The timing was perfect with Margaret's Boston trip. Margaret listened, her face calm but her mind racing. She'd been right to trust her instincts, right to trust Tyler's whisper. That weekend, while David believed Margaret was processing everything, she moved with quiet precision. With Marcus's help, she transferred all funds from their joint accounts to her new secure account. She documented everything: the texts she'd found, the financial records, the photographs Marcus had discreetly taken of David and Christine together. On Monday, she had David served with divorce papers at his office. The document was thorough, prepared by her excellent attorney, with evidence of infidelity and financial betrayal attached. But Margaret did something else too. She wrote a letter. Not to David. He didn't deserve her words anymore. She wrote to Christine. You thought you found someone to build a life with, the letter began. But a man who betrays his family will betray you too. He was planning to use my money I earned, to start a life with you. Did you know that? Did you know he was willing to leave his son with nothing? Consider carefully what kind of man you've chosen. I hope you never experience the betrayal I have. But if you continue down this path, you'll learn the hard way. That broken trust leaves everyone broken. She mailed it. 3 months later, Margaret sat in her newly rented apartment, smaller than the house, but peaceful. Tyler had adjusted better than she'd feared. Children are resilient, her mother always said, especially when they know they're loved. The divorce was proceeding. David had tried to fight for assets, but the evidence was overwhelming. Margaret's attorney was excellent. She would keep most of their savings, and the house would be sold, with the majority going to her and Tyler. One afternoon, Margaret's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello, is this Margaret Hayes? Woman's voice, uncertain. Yes, this is Christine Reeves. I received your letter. Margaret's breath caught. She'd never expected a response. I wanted you to know, Christine continued, her voice breaking slightly, that I ended things with David. You were right. He showed his true colors when the divorce got difficult. He asked me to lie for him, to help him hide assets. I realized I'd been a fool. There was a long pause. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Christine said. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that your letter opened my eyes. I am sorry for the pain I caused you and your son. Margaret stood at her kitchen window, watching Tyler play in the small backyard, his laughter floating through the air. Thank you for telling me, Margaret said finally. I hope you find someone worthy of your time. Someone honest. After hanging up, Margaret felt something shift inside her. The anger that had burned for months began to cool, not into forgiveness yet, but into acceptance. She'd protected herself. She'd protected Tyler. She'd shown strength when Betrayal tried to break her. 6 months after Tyler's whisper changed everything, Margaret found herself in a surprising place. Grateful for her son's courage to tell her the truth. Grateful for her own strength to act on it. Grateful that she'd discovered the betrayal before losing everything. On Tyler's 8th birthday, she threw him a party in their apartment. Friends came, and her family, and Tyler beamed as he blew out his candles. Later, as she tucked him into bed, Tyler looked at her seriously. Are you happy now? Margaret thought about the question. She thought about the pain of the past months, but also about the freedom of truth, the peace of a fresh start. I am getting there, sweetheart, she said honestly. And we're going to be just fine, better than fine, because we have each other. Because we have each other, she confirmed, kissing his forehead. And because you were brave enough to whisper the truth when it mattered most. Tyler smiled and closed his eyes. Margaret turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her son sleep peacefully. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight there was peace, and sometimes that's all we need: the wisdom to hear the quiet truths, the courage to act on them, and the strength to build something new from the ashes of betrayal.